I can do this. Okay, we're live. Oh my gosh, we're live. All right. Today, okay, sorry. I'm going to start now. Right now. Good afternoon. Today is Friday, September 11th, 2020. Today, we're going to talk about the Apple September 15th event, new App Store guidelines for developers, and a whole lot more because this is the iMore show. And joining us today is Joe Keller, Assistant Managing Editor of iMore. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Good to be here. What a week.
What a week, no kidding. And also joining us to maybe help calm our fears and relax us a little bit is iMore Show's expert therapist and co-founder of anxiety-videos.com. Welcome to the show, Georgia Dow.
I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. And I, of course, am Lori Gill. So let's start with the big news that kept us from starting our show on time because it just came out just at the moment we would normally start our podcast, which is some developer app store guidelines that are very much a big deal and they're very big changes. And frankly, I'm glad that this is happening. So, Joe, you had a little more time than I to prepare for it. So give us the rundown of what the guideline changes are.
So there are a lot of guideline changes. I think the ones that a lot of people are going to be interested in surround gaming services, but there are also changes for things like reader apps and web app clients and things like that. One of the more intriguing ones to me is one-to-one experiences app. So like, I don't know. Like one-to-one teaching, that sort of thing, mentoring.
Like if I gave therapy, like if I had an app for therapy and I was, one-on-one therapy, I would not have to.
Yeah, I think that might be applicable. Those don't need to.
But what if it was one to a group? If I was one, yet I'm teaching a group.
So those apps specifically would still need to use in-app purchases.
Wow. So if I did group therapy,
you would need to use Apple system and they'd get 30% off that. Yeah. They love their 30%.
Yeah. Lovely.
So let's start with, let's start at the top. So the first one concerns a lot of the new stuff that's coming in iOS 14. And this things like app clips, widgets, existing elements like extensions, and notifications. Apple wants those things to relate to the functionality of the app that they're
What does that mean?
So like, if it's strictly a calendar app, don't have a widget for email.
Yeah, and this is very common for Apple to make that point. And when widgets first came out, Apple was very clear that the control center widgets, they need to actually do something. They can't just be a way to open the app. So if you have, a widget on your home screen for Fantastical, for example, it can't just be a widget that opens Fantastical. It actually has to have information on the screen to make it useful, because that's a way of like eliminating garbage on your home screen or something like that. So that makes a lot of sense that they want this to be, they don't want you to walk into a store with app clips, for example, and all it does is just show you an ad for the Starbucks or something like that. There has to be a reason why app clips is being used.
Yeah, there has to be content. I do wonder what this means. So right now in beta, there's an app called Widgie. And Widgie is an app where you can basically make custom widgets, like widgets that say, like, read your, that show your disk space or your battery level or things like that. And it can have all this sort of functionality. I assume because it's coming through the app, through the Widgie app, then that those widgets will be fine. But,
and it is a widget maker, so it's doing what it says it's going to be doing.
Yeah. it's just a widget maker for a lot of different kinds of information.
Right.
Yeah, so that's probably going to be fine because that I think from what it sounds like you're saying, it means that I might be able to create a widget that just opens up an app, but it was built by an app that has a lot of functionality, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think we should move on to next is games.
Yes.
This is the big one. This
Mhm.
and it's also the most confusing to me. So there's been a big brouhaha recently about streaming game services. The one in the news most recently is xCloud from Microsoft, which offers a catalog of games for a single monthly subscription. It's like Netflix, but it's video games, and nothing is downloaded onto the device. Apple didn't want to allow these sorts of services, at least in their current form. So these new guidelines do outline some ways streaming game services can actually come to Apple's mobile platform. So this new rule 4.9 and then 4.9.1 and 4.9.2 all concern streaming games. So streaming games, I'm just going to read this particular rule.
Read it
Streaming
out
games are permitted so long as they adhere to all guidelines. For example, each game update must be submitted for review. Developers must provide appropriate metadata for search. Games must use in-app purchase to unlock features or functionality, etc. Of course, there's always the open internet and web browser apps to reach all users outside of the App Store.
In other words, if you don't like it,
pointed.
Yeah, exactly.
Rule 9.1, each streaming game must be submitted to the App Store as an individual app so that it has an App Store product page, appears in charts and search, and has user ratings and review, can be managed with screen time and other parental control apps, appears on the user's device, etc. So here's the thing that really bugs me about this. And going back to 4.9, okay, each game has to be submitted for review. There are over 100 games in the xCloud catalog.
Mm-hmm.
So Apple's going to review all of those. I mean, these are games distributed through Microsoft's platform. Microsoft is already reviewing and certifying these games.
Yeah, and in the case of this, the idea would, presumably what would happen is, let's say it's exactly 100 games, and let's say Microsoft submits all 100 games and everything is fine, but then one game receives an update, and then for some reason Apple does not approve that update to that game, then all of xCloud gets pulled from iOS and iPadOS because it's part of their streaming service. They won't be able to just pull that game.
Does that usually happen though? Like, does every single time you get a review, you have to submit it to be reviewed?
Well, so this is the dilemma.
Because then they could stop. Like, it's going to be constantly. It's up. It's not up. It's up.
So that's
it's not
the thing.
up because it's not just one single game. You're getting a package of games. And so we end up with, like, if you have a single app and it gets, taken down or you can't update it for a period of time, it's not a huge deal. You're dealing with 100 games that Apple is looking at very strongly right now because of,
So I think what happens here. So I think what would happen here is they don't pull the whole xCloud app. I think since they're reviewing every single game is going to appear as an app on the App Store. And, in the theoretical universe where Microsoft actually adheres to this, which if I'm Microsoft, I absolutely don't.
Yeah, because it defeats the purpose of what they're trying to do.
The service. Mm-hmm. And so I think what ends up happening is, let's say it's, I don't know, Halo. Microsoft submits an update for Halo to Apple, and Apple's like, no, for XXX reason. I think what that just means is Halo doesn't appear in the xCloud catalog app and doesn't appear on the App Store. The rest of the xCloud catalog will still be there, and the app will still be up. and you'll still be able to access all of the rest of the games. It's just
You can't upstate Halo.
yeah, and there's a question to me about what exactly these apps have to contain. Like, so Halo Infinite's launching sometime in 2021. Do I have to download all of Halo Infinite onto my like? Does Microsoft have to make a Halo Infinite version for iPhone and iPad to get them to run, or will it be able to be some kind of container app that streams that content in?
Because it says it has to be a separate app to the App Store as a separate app, right? So this becomes like the entire purpose of the service.
Yeah.
Becomes like, can you just have it on, like, my thought, and just tell me no, Georgia, but like, you have the app on the App Store. So they've contended with, they do have it on the App Store as a separate app, but if you buy it as a package, you can just stream the damn thing.
Right. So I guess what would happen?
You have to download all of Halo and play it. You could stream it, but they have the choice of just getting the app separately also.
Well, no. So you would have to, I think you would have to stream it through the container app and not through Microsoft's xCloud app. It would be through Microsoft's Halo app. And I think this would all end up being like different Microsoft apps, even the third-party games that are on xCloud. So like Microsoft Fallout 76 or, whatever's on there, even though that's a Bethesda game. And that's the thing, like companies like Bethesda and other third parties that do put their games on xCloud would have to go through review from Microsoft and from Apple now. And I don't know how many third-party apps are going to, or how many third-party developers are going to want to do that.
Well, they don't have a choice right now, right? So they will, because they don't have a choice.
I don't think Microsoft's going to do this.
Go with it?
I don't think Microsoft's going to bring, because I mean, it's onerous. It's completely screwed up. Like, this is not how this should be. It makes me feel like Apple doesn't understand what these services are, or is it more that Apple
doesn't want it because it's a competition to arcade?
Yeah, so they make rules that say, "Oh, you can put this service on our."
Yeah, we're not being difficult. You can have it. Just jump through this 16,000.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous.
And don't forget the other message that they sent us. Of course, there's always the open internet and web browser apps.
Web apps, the sweet solution.
Yeah, that's the one they always point to. So if I'm rereading 4.9, 4.9.1, and 4.9.2 to try to like pull out the pertinent information. So one, streaming games are permitted as long as they adhere to guidelines, right? So that's there's more to 4.9, but that's the basic gist of it. Streaming games are allowed, but they have to adhere to guidelines. But part two is where part one seems to not make sense, which is that streaming games must appear on users' device. So there's a lot more in 4.9.1, which is they have to be able to be submitted to the App Store and have their own product page, and they have to be able to appear in charts for ratings and can be managed with screen time. That's all this other stuff that it's like, well, okay, that's a little bit awkward, but it's still part of streaming. But where it says appears on the user's device is where it seems like Apple basically just deleted 4.9 because that's
yeah.
And I know Joe, you've got what appears to be what they're talking about, which is like a container app, but that doesn't fit in my mind the idea of what a streaming service would be. So Apple Arcade is not a streaming service. Apple Arcade is a service that provides games that you can download onto your device. So what Apple is doing is asking companies that want to make streaming services for games adhere to Apple's way of doing it. But Apple also has these guidelines that say you can't make your app exactly like ours. So they're trying to tell developers, make your app exactly like ours, even though that almost kind of goes against their own rules of don't make your app exactly like ours.
So in 4.9.2, okay, so it says game streaming services can provide a catalog app to assist users with sign up and finding the games if they comply with the app reviews, including in-app purchases. And And the requirement of 4.9 would allow streaming services to offer the game as a download on the App Store with basic functionality and additional levels of gameplay streamed to a player's device. So I don't know. I find that exceptionally confusing to like what are we doing? What's happening? Like the simplicity of having, one app to rule them all and you can just stream at your heart's content. They're allowing it, but not, is what I'm thinking. Is that right? Like it's not really.
I think this is exactly what Lori said, where they're saying, yeah, sure.
But
be on the App Store. You could be on the App Store. We allow game streaming services, but really they make it too, onerous.
It's just not going to be like a game stream because you have to sign up separately.
Yeah,
for
I would
each
imagine.
Game. Anyways,
yeah, I would imagine how this would theoretically work is you download a game. So big fall game is Cyberpunk 2077. So let's say Stadia comes to the iPhone, because Google service isn't going to be as popular as Microsoft, so they're going to go wherever they can go.
Yeah.
So they might actually do this. And so, you'd download the Cyberpunk 2077 app and you'd go in and you'd probably sign in with your Stadia account. It would probably be like existing Google apps. You sign in with the Google app on your iPhone and you can apply that sign in to other Google apps that you have on your device. I would imagine it works in a similar way. It would work in a similar way for streaming services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's
completely ridiculous.
I could get and understand Apple saying stuff like you have to actually have a games page for different games. It's when they start talking about it has to be able to be on your device and things like that. That's where things get really confusing.
Yeah. Because I wouldn't care. Like if they just said you have to have the app and then you can stream it, but you also have to have the app on the App Store. That would be like, I'd be like, oh, that's fine. Like, what does that really matter? That's not really a big deal. They put every single app out of, like, again, it's only going to come out when September tomorrow. It's only going to come out, if you're watching this live, 12th of September. It's only coming out with about 100 games. So it's not that much. They put each game up separately and you can stream it and you can just stream and enjoy and consume at your heart's content if you wish to. Mm-hmm. But this is not saying that that's the way that this is going to go. It sounds like you have to sign up, register. There's a little, I forget what it's called, but the Apple, an app, Joe, help me.
Container.
Thank you. Container app. I was drawing container if anyone was watching. Yeah. And you have to kind of go through all of the things that you don't want to go through if you're streaming apps.
Yeah.
Right. Are you going to download 100 container logos onto your?
I don't want to.
Yeah, that's
with App Library in iOS 14.
Yeah, you're right about that.
That makes it a lot more attractive because
that's true.
I will
never see automatically.
That.
If when you downloaded it, it said, okay, listen, we're just going to download all of the apps in this, in a Microsoft kind of box, and you can then choose. But they're all downloaded. You just don't see them. And they did that on their own passively, so I don't know it because that stresses me. I don't know if then I wouldn't care, right? Because they're already there. I don't really see it. It tells you that you're gonna have no memory left at the end on your phone. Yeah. Is that then such a big deal?
Yeah, I think what will actually end up being the biggest blockers for services like this is going to be app review. Like the notion that Apple needs to review every single game. I mean, like Microsoft, I don't think Microsoft's going to go for it. I don't think developers are going to go for it. And then there's the in-app purchase angle. Like, these games have all of these games have microtransactions. And so those are going to have to go through in-app purchase. They're going to have to. Apple's going to, I think it's part of these guidelines, Yeah, of course. They have to use in-app purchase, and they have to allow sign in.
That's what Apple. I think that in the end, that's really what Apple wants. I think that everything else is just.
This is about the money.
Smoke and mirrors, right? I think that the rest is just let's get you confused, so we talk about this. But the end, the in-app review is so that they can make sure that they're getting their cut, and you're not because they say you can't have any. Oh, sorry, you can't have any backyard deals with, you know, you have to make sure it's all on the up and up, and that we can see whatever the subscriptions are, and none of them are going to be kind of this, you know, thing where we, you know, it's hidden and you're getting away with it, or you're buying it from some other place. I think that that's in the end why the reviews also are coming up, so that they can cut you if they find out, oh, guess what you've been doing? You've been siphoning off from daddy a little bit of the extra bit on the side. And, you know, Apple, as that parent app, wants to make sure that they get their cut. I don't think, though, the reviewing of 100 games is that big of a deal on its own. Like, I'm like, again, it could take them less than a day to do this. Like, truly, this is less of a day of reviewing games. Like, right? Like, 300 times 100, like they're doing, you know, like 30,000 games a day. Like, it's fine.
Yeah. What really kind of mystifies me about this is if you just allowed Microsoft to offer what it originally wanted to, which is an app, a catalog app that also played the games, that also streamed all the games, then in-app purchases would have to go through that, and that's just one app to manage in-app purchases for. They're making more work for themselves, and I don't understand why.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting to see that Apple is making things happen, is broadening this out. But I can see this as being very frustrating for companies who want to expand into streaming game streaming, because this continues to be confusing and difficult to manage. But I've talked about this before. We've said that game streaming is kind of, it's like the future, right? Like, we know that's where this is headed. Mm-hmm. So for developers and companies to be sort of stifled by the inability to participate that in the Apple ecosystem, that's really just a very frustrating experience. Is like, my company can't grow because the company that I work with to help my company grow is stopping me from growing. So this is one step in that direction, in that they are expanding this to making streaming gaming services allowed at all, which is something they really kind of haven't before. But the hoops that they have to jump through to get there are still pretty rough, pretty hard to come by. So,
and they're allowing streaming services as long as it's not really streaming services.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they still want it to be like it's not streaming, but it's streaming.
Yeah.
So
no, I know.
It's kind of like they want both. Like, they're trying to say, listen, we're allowing it, but
not.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not clear.
Yeah. Well, right? I bet you over the next couple of days. So next week will probably, one of the things we'll talk about next week will probably be a follow-up with this, because we're probably going to get a lot more information from developers who really kind of explain the language for us to understand, and like how that goes into place practically. So we'll probably hear a lot more about it over the next coming days. But some other things that we'll be talking about next week have to do with a September 15th event. So Joe and I last week on the show were talking about what we expected to happen this past Tuesday. Georgia, you missed out on our lively conversation of what Apple might just suddenly decide to tell us that is available. So the rumor,
anything that I'm really excited about, Lori?
Maybe we'll see. Oh, I think so. But so we thought that Apple was just going to announce a bunch of new products in a press release, and we were kind of going back and forth as to what we thought that might be. Turns out that whole thing was completely wrong. Apple was never going to announce just a bunch of products in a press release. Instead, they announced the official September 15th event. So that's what we've got coming up. So even though we blathered on about our hopes and dreams about what we thought Apple would drop last Tuesday, now we can talk a little bit about what we actually expect to have them drop this coming Tuesday, which I think these are two different things, because we had talked about how just a press release, to me, Apple's not going to announce some big first party products in a press release, right? That's that's just too big of a deal. If they were going to update an old iPad or refresh the Series 3 and give it a new name, sure, yeah. but it just didn't seem likely that Apple would make brand new products with brand new features available without a big event where they could show it off. So to quickly run down what we thought they were going to announce, it was going to be potentially the Apple Watch Series 6, a iPad Air update that actually is a complete redesign, and potentially a updated iPad, just an update to the iPad, and then possibly a new version of what we were thinking would be the Apple Watch Series 3, but maybe with a different name and some new features on it. So we can kind of speculate from here. So what do we really think is going to happen on the 15th of September at the official Apple event?
Yeah. So there's a new rumor out this morning about this, what people are calling the Apple Watch SE, but isn't, I mean, that's probably not going to be the name. That it's going to be it's actually going to use the same design as the Series 4 and Series 5. 40 and 44 millimeters. So no ECG. So it's gonna be stripped down, but it's still gonna be an Apple Watch, and it's probably targeting, what is it, the $199 price point of the Series 3. So it's gonna replace the Series 3.
Which is such a great price.
Yes.
If they could get that I could see, like,
oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've got the Series 4 Apple Watch, and I know this new version won't have some of the sensors, but this thing is great. If I could have bought this for $199, heck yeah, I would be very excited about that.
Oh yeah.
The screen size alone is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think my hope was that Apple would actually put some of these sensors in it because, you know, they're a couple of years old now. Like there's the fall detection and the ECG that came out in Series 4. So they're old enough now that they, you know, Apple's like spent their R&D money, you know, they've gone through it for a couple of years. And so I do wish that they were included in the new one, especially fall detection. I personally think that has saved so many lives. I've read so many articles about people who were lost. They fell down a cliff. They were rescued because they were unconscious when it happened. People in car accidents, so many times that kind of impact that could have left somebody stranded would immediately call for help. So I'm hoping that is not true and that it's actually just going to be literally the Series 4 with all of the sensors, but maybe with a new name and obviously a lower price.
And really, even if they didn't have the EKG, I don't think that would be a huge deal. Like I don't have any heart issues, so I don't really have to use it. But the fall detect, like anyone can fall at any time. And if you happen to be alone, those moments where your watch is going to, you know, send help without you even having to answer. And that's the big deal, is that if you don't answer, help is on its way. That's right. Life-changing for people. So I'm with you, Lori. I hope that it's on it, because I think that then it's affordable to be able to give to people and it'll save more lives.
Yeah, at least fall detection.
But then at the same time, though, the monitoring of unusual heart patterns has also saved a lot of lives. I think there was one story that really touched me. It was a young man who was an athlete. I think he might have even still been a child, like under the age of 18. But if not, he was very young and did not feel any feelings, was fine, felt fine all the time, no big deal. Apple Watch was starting to recognize that there was an unusual heart pattern. This young man who was an athlete goes to the doctor, says, you know, I feel fine, but my Apple Watch says there's something wrong with my heart. Doctors even thought, no, this technology is just not that. But, you know, we'll run some tests anyways, just to be sure. Sure enough, he had a heart condition that as an athlete could have caused him to have a heart attack or a stroke at an early age. And we've seen famous athletes die from this exact thing. So that young person caught that early just by having an ECG on his wrist that he didn't even think about. He didn't even pay attention to. It wasn't even an issue until it started recognizing an unusual pattern. So really, I want both of these sensors because I want everyone to be able to have this kind of health feature that they don't even have to do anything. It's just there and it's just working for them. So that's my hope is they'll both be there and that it will be $199 so that anybody can buy it. And frankly, I want it to be platform agnostic, which I highly doubt a $199 version would be platform agnostic. I feel like there's a lot more to do before Apple can get to that step.
But that really would be amazing.
Yeah. It's one of those things that of all of the things that Apple does, to me, that's the first thing, it's the first product that Apple has made that I feel truly could change people's lives and save lives. Whereas everything else is like a convenience feature. I think that one is there's so much more to it that is just the world should be able to participate in it. It shouldn't be restricted to iPhone users. That's one thing, like my significant other's mom, she's prone to fall. She does fall quite a bit. She's older and it happens. She uses an Android device though. So, I would have to convince her. Yeah. Or I would have to convince her to spend the money on a new iPhone. And she's already
have an old iPhone that she keeps that's just for the watch. And again, the only thing is that's so you have like buying a phone that you're not really going to be using. And you can get a cheap secondhand old iPhone that will just kind of run the features for the watch. But yeah, I think that's beyond for most people their reach. Right?
And then you're getting into if you're going to use an Apple Watch for fall detection alone, just go get a fall detection monitor. Like what I mean?
You have to pay a subscription.
That's true.
Right?
That's
you have to pay usually like between $25 and $40 every month forever. And I'll just say it, the one that I had from my mom, they weren't that great. They're not going to contact me. They're not going to send the image. They send it to the central service. The service then sends someone else. They're not going to monitor where the location is. They're not going to be able to ask. You can't make a call to it. It's good, but it does not have the same features and it's very expensive.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So even just for the feature alone, an Apple Watch is still a benefit.
Save money even in a year.
Yeah, that's true. So that's potentially coming. So there's also potentially the Apple Watch Series 6, which Joe and I literally flip-flopped on the show as to whether or not I thought it would come in a press release or maybe at an iPhone event later. Because it potentially is a big update, though it probably will look the same and most of the features would be the same. There's a couple additions on there that are big enough that they warrant their own event. Joe, give us some of the new features that are rumored coming to the Series 6 and maybe talk a little bit about whether or not you think this is going to be announced on next Tuesday.
So I think, first of all, I think, yes, they will announce the Apple Watch next Tuesday.
The Series 6?
The Series 6, yeah. I think they'll announce both of them. And I think, so one of the things that's supposed to come to the Series 6, I think the sort of big new sensor is pulse oximeter. It measures the amount of oxygen that's in your blood. That's supposedly tied to new mental health features to detect if you're having a panic attack, things like that. One moment.
I don't know if
Georgia, talk about that a little bit.
I don't know if the blood oxygenation will really actually be good for detecting a panic attack, whereas your blood pressure increase does relate directly to a panic attack. You're actually, during a panic attack, your oxygenation is actually quite high. But your heart rate's also going up. Like you're getting ready for fight or flight. So you're getting ready to fight or attack. So usually actually you're quite oxygenated. Not everyone. There's like a very small percentage of people that are fainters during a panic attack. Exceptionally rare. You'd already know it if that's happened because it would have already occurred. So don't worry anyone that might have health anxiety. But the blood oxygen level does link directly to compromised brain and heart functionality. So respiratory, cardiac arrest, has low oxygen saturation. And that also is really important. And, if you're, panicking though, your oxygenation may not be, but with the oxygenation and your heart rate, those two features together, it can be exceptionally accurate in telling, is this a panic attack versus is this a cardiac arrest. And
Mhm.
the cool thing about that is that a lot of my people, the first time they have a panic attack, you truly believe that you are dying. And most people do go to the hospital. And I think that knowing that this is a panic attack would be really confirming, and like many people would then, like, in the Breathe app could maybe then get launched and say, let's try to
Yes.
do the breathing. Let's wait. Again, a panic attack is like 15 to 40 minutes. How are you
This
feeling? You're doing better. Don't worry, you're okay.
Yeah, this makes so much sense, Georgia. Being able to monitor your heart and monitor your blood oxygen level. And then I personally, my heart starts pounding. I feel like there's something wrong with me. I think I'm dizzy. It's not going away. I'm trying to relax and calm down, and it's not going away. I think I might be sick. I might be having a heart attack. It gets worse because now I'm panicking even more.
Mhm.
And my Apple Watch goes, hey, we just noticed that you've got a lot of oxygen in your blood and your heart rate has gone up a lot. We don't think that this is something you need to go to the hospital for. We think this might just be you feeling some anxiety. Try some breathing exercises. Here's the breathing app. I would immediately go, oh, okay. I've never had a panic attack before. I didn't know that's what that felt like. Okay, I'm going to do this breathing exercise and see if it works.
Yeah.
And then again, just like you're saying, so if a person's blood oxygen suddenly dropped,
Mhm.
then the Apple Watch might be able to recognize, hey, we noticed that your blood oxygen just dropped and your heart rate has slowed or maybe sped up. I'm not exactly sure what that is.
Yeah.
Then it might say, we don't think this is a panic attack. We
Oh,
think
sorry,
that you
slow.
should.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
then in that case, it would say, we don't think this is a panic attack. We think that you should consult your doctor. So that's potentially what these things could do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really could. And oxygenation, like usually you're at 95 to 100%. So if it drops down to, 80 or even worse, right, which is at danger levels, it could say, listen, I think that you should go seek medical help. And a lot of people, especially if, you feel like, I'm usually healthy and but I don't feel good, to be able to know what your oxygenation levels are at, that could be a really big deal. I think a lot more people would go to the hospital when they should. And a lot of people would not go to the hospital, could monitor, because Apple is not going to say you're fine. It's going to say monitor, but your oxygenation is still, you're within good levels. Monitor how you're feeling, but it seems like, more chance of it being a panic attack.
Yeah.
I think that it would also free up our hospitals for people that are going in when they're actually going to be okay. And it's a horrible feeling when you go to the hospital, anyone that's ever done that, thinking that you're dying, because you do feel that you get a surge of fear, right? And all of the neurotransmitters, and you're getting all of that adrenaline into your system. And then 40 minutes later, you're feeling completely fine. And you're sitting there going like, oh God, like you're almost embarrassed and wish that you were having a heart attack, though you're very happy that you're not. And so I think that would also free up our hospitals, and people wouldn't feel bad about going in when they couldn't, and they could monitor this.
And right now, there's a lot of people not going to the hospital when they should be out of fear of getting sick, or just this general sense of I shouldn't be going to the hospital because there's a bunch of people that are sick with COVID-19, and I should let them, have the hospital. And I have been hearing that statistically there are people who should have been going to the hospital that are avoiding it. So this could be another assurance to go. If there's like some data or information that your Apple Watch is kind of recommending to you, this might be something worth talking to your doctor about, or maybe seeking immediate emergency help. So yeah. And Joe, in addition to the panic ability to detect a panic attack, or at least detect that it's not a panic attack, I don't know exactly what it would be like. There's more mental health stuff that might be coming.
So yeah. And Georgia, it's the rumor is that it's going to work almost exactly like you were talking about. It's going to combine the heart rate sensor with the pulse ox sensor and motion data, so it can tell your heart rate spiking, your pulse ox is up, and you're not moving. So we think you might be experiencing a panic attack. There's also this this idea that you will get like just almost general anxiety alerts if it thinks your anxiety is spiking. So maybe it'll be like you suggested, where the Breathe app launches and say, hey, let's let's breathe and calm down.
Yeah. The coolest part though to that is that if you have that go through the day, right? Like you end up learning about like sometimes you don't know that your anxiety is up. We're not really aware of it. Some people are very aware of it and some people aren't. So that little bit of are you feeling a little anxious? You'll be like, oh yeah, I have my in-laws. I guess that they, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe.
No, exactly. Things like that would be welcome. And I think there are probably broader implications just for the data set that say the health app can collect if there is that additional pulse ox sensor, while you're sleeping or just while you're resting in general. And it can, one of the things that I find about using the Apple Watch, so things like the rings, or the activity rings, or even the sleep app, is what they seem to do is really push you to do the healthier thing, like do the stand that minute, or go for that jog, or move more throughout your day. And with since I've been using the sleep function on the watch with the watchOS 7 beta, go to sleep at a regular time, have a regular bedtime. I've been sleeping better since the watchOS 7 beta got installed on my watch.
Yeah, so think about that. Like if we're talking about including some sleep tracking to some degree, some sleep recommendations, we're talking about the Breathe app that already exists to help you when you might be feeling anxious. We're talking about potentially an app, a general mental health app that might provide some resources and some information, some articles. I don't know if you, Georgia, have used the period tracking feature on Apple Watch, but
I haven't yet, but I'm going to be switching because I do use an app for it, because it's one of these things that are really like, if you're a woman, this is really helpful to be able to track where you are at. It's a big deal for it. So I'm going to be switching. I haven't used it yet though.
But it even has additional resource information, which I think is really helpful. Whether you are trying to get pregnant or trying to not get pregnant, or you just want to make sure that your lady parts are working as they should. This is just information that can help you keep track of that. As weird as it sounds, I think I might be starting to be premenopausal right now. I know I feel way too young for that, but I was having like an extended period. It was like 2 weeks straight, which I've never in my whole life had. So I was able to keep track of that on my Apple Watch, so that when I went and talked to my doctor, she saw exactly what my pattern was. And that, like, this is all really good information.
That's so important. Like tracking your health data in a passive way, because that's like most of my people, I ask them to track what is their sleep, what is their daily levels of anxiety. For women, I often ask them to track where their periods are, because again, that can change where your hormone levels are. And that's really important to have all of that it's already done and in an easy downloadable or to transfer or print and bring to your health professional. Once you get the data, the rest of life is easy. So if it would track it in a way that's really easy to consume, versus like the rings are nice, they're cute and they're fun, but they're not really, it's not data that is, useful for me that I finished the day, but that I've exercised on these days. And this is what my anxiety level was. That is everything. Then we can figure out the patterns, and we're all pattern oriented. So once you figure out that, then we can figure out this is what's happening here. And so like people don't want to do it. Journaling is dry and dull. Having the watch do it for you will save lives and make people happier.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. These are really big, great features that I think, again, make the Apple Watch something that everyone should own, and that I frankly still truly believe that Apple should make platform agnostic, so that Android users could take advantage of these same features without the limitations of, trying to have some old iPhone just sitting around or whatever. So yeah, for sure. We are running low on time, so I want to jump ahead a little bit. The next big potential announcement is possibly a brand new complete design change for the iPad Air. Joe, run us down the list of the features. I know we just talked about it last week, but just to get everybody up to date and put Georgia on the right page with it.
So iPad Air 4 or iPad Air 2020 or whatever they end up calling it. The big news here is that Apple's supposedly adopting the design of the iPad Pro, the flat sides, chamfered edges, no even bezels across all sides of the device, no home button, sort of design that they've had on the iPad Pro since 2018. There was a supposed manual leak a while back. It looks good. There's a smart connector on the back, like on the Pros.
Pencil support.
Yeah, I would imagine
charging.
it would have to be Apple Pencil 2 support.
That's fair.
Because one of the other rumors is that with this redesign, it's getting USB-C, and the Apple Pencil 1 isn't compatible with that. To say the
Apple
least.
Pencil. Let's just say I saw it. My kids have our old iPad, and they plugged in the pencil to it, and it stuck out. They put it down on the table, and it was sticking out, like not even on the table, out from the table. And I'm like, the dog's like, the kids, one of my children are going to walk by and break it. But really I really want to just snap it off.
You want to break it.
Yeah, you want to break it.
Oh, it's so horrible. It's such a horrible idea.
I think the Apple Pencil 2 is just, it's superior in every way. Every way.
Everywhere. You don't lose the cap. How many people are missing the cap off of their,
there's no cap. Because there's no cap on the pencil.
There's no nothing. The only thing I would say that they could add to it is like you should reverse it and be able to erase.
Yeah, there should be like an eraser tip.
Just please, like that just makes sense. You've been talking
to Renee. We know.
Come on, do that.
But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. They should do that. So Apple Pencil 2 support on the iPad Air, finally bringing that down to a more affordable iPad. Even if they're not going to make the Apple Pencil 2 more affordable, it's only $30 more than the first generation Apple Pencil. So that's not the biggest deal.
Worth it. It's worth
the extra $30.
It's worth it. Spend the $30 for me. Don't have coffee for a week and just upgrade it.
The thing is, though, the old Apple Pencil doesn't work with the new iPad Pro, and in this case, it might potentially be the iPad Air 4, and the new Apple Pencil 2 does not work with anything right now, anything other than the iPad Pro and maybe potentially the iPad 4. So there's not even
that also is
so confusing.
So wrong. It's just wrong. I'm sorry. That's poopy. So wrong. What are you doing? What are you doing? Not everyone hates. I hate the old pencil so much. Come on, let it work so that no one has to go through that process. Please. I get that you can't charge it. I get it. I hear you. I know why. But
you don't accept why.
You saw me starting to tell you why.
Yes, I saw it. You're like, Georgia, how are you going to charge this baby? I'd be like, you have to buy the other one just to charge it. I know. Get a charge pad. I don't know. A cheap pad to charge your pencil. There's something else you can put it. I don't know. Yeah. But yes, I know. I hear you. You can't charge this stupid thing.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this is all gonna change and get better. I think you're right. I think Apple Pencil 1 was for it was Apple's first generation Apple Pencil. They just have to get the iPads up to date now. I think is the next step, and maybe potentially the iPad Air 4 is the very next design change that will allow for the connection. So not just charging, but also the connection of the iPad to the Apple Pencil.
To charge it, it's kind of important. A dead pencil is not going to help you.
Yes. Yeah. Another thing is, so right now the iPad Air 3 is a 10.5 inch screen. This new iPad Air is supposedly going up to 10.8 with the new design. So smaller bezels, device. I would guess that the device is actually has the same physical dimensions as the 11-inch iPad Pro. And I wouldn't be surprised if it fits the same accessories as the 2018 11-inch iPad Pro with the smaller camera module. I would imagine it doesn't get the newer 2020
the LiDAR camera. I don't know.
For the iPad Air, I mean, if this thing is going to cost $499, although there are rumors that they're bumping the price up to $649, which please don't do that, Apple.
Yeah.
I think to save money, they'd go with the smaller module. Plus, maybe they still have those molds. So, and then the really intriguing thing here is that there's no talk in the manual, the leaked manual, supposed manual, of Face ID.
Right.
Instead, even though there's no home button, there will still be Touch ID. but it will be in the sleep wake button on the top / side of the device. So it'll be a thinner one, but the manual shows a longer sleep wake button than is on the current Pro that has this design. So
If I could do it really
larger sleep
quickly,
area.
yeah, that doesn't seem, but it is
Yeah.
like when you switch from how you turn on your device. If I use my kid's phone and I have to press it, and for mine I have to swipe it, and for that's the only thing. There's a little bit of a
Yeah.
learning curve.
Yeah.
I think I'd press it and then be upset that it wasn't open and forget that I have to leave my finger there for a moment so it registers.
Yeah, and it would also would also indicate that this iPad isn't getting the 4 speaker setup that the iPad Pros enjoy. And I would imagine Apple wants to keep that as a differentiator for the Pros, but the realistically longer button actually would interfere with the speaker grill.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of think I get it that if you're going to put Face ID in a tablet, it's going to make it more expensive. But Face ID has been on the market since 2017 2017. So at this point, again, Apple has made back all the R&D they put into it. It costs them probably a lot less now to make those things. And in an iPad Air with edge-to-edge screen, why not just throw that notch in there? They did it for the iPad Pro. They have an existing case. That's the iPad Pro, like you're talking about the earlier generation iPad Pro that doesn't have the LiDAR camera on the back, right? So they could literally just put the guts of the iPad Air into the case of the iPad Pro, which they've done. They did that with, if I'm not mistaken, the iPad. They put it in an iPad Air case, but it was the iPad. It just had the guts of the iPad and it was in the case of the iPad Air. So, we're like, let's move it all into that direction.
I'm going to come back around to that particular thought in a few, Lori. But yeah, I would love to see Face ID come to the iPad Air. I've seen various takes about Face ID versus Touch ID ever since Face ID appeared on the iPhone 10 3 years ago. And, what's Touch ID is better because you can activate it when you're pulling it out of your pocket. Well, Face ID is better because it's more secure and it's actually faster for everything that isn't unlocking your device. These arguments go back and forth. Face ID is the closest thing to objectively better as you can be on the iPad than Touch ID. It's not even a contest.
But for the phone versus for the iPad, probably, when you're working, I can understand how Face ID in many cases would be great. But for if you are a medical professional or if you're out in public or with people, now most people are going to be masked up. So you end up going through the process, that annoyance of it doesn't register and you have to tap in your code anyways. And in those cases, I would say Touch ID is improved because you don't have to go through it and it will be quicker and faster and possibly more hygienic. If you're wearing gloves, again, the latex gloves, it kind of reads through it depending on black. I don't find that it helps, but for ones that are the very clear plastic, I've been able to, I can actually touch screen and deal with it like that. But, that would be my only piece. I don't know if it would work through, the new one would work through latex gloves if you are working. But for most people, they're going to be wearing a mask probably and not wearing gloves. And so I'm like,
Right. And that's why there's that leaked. So Georgia, there's a leaked manual for the iPad that actually shows the sleep wake button with Touch ID. So that manual could have been completely false and could have been a fake. But if it's not a fake, my thought, Touch ID with a button, testing the waters on the iPad, see how it works, see how people like it, but also Face ID. So the first device that Apple will have ever made that has both Face ID and Touch ID, and you can use them interchangeably. I love this idea, right? Because if it's good, maybe we wouldn't see it in the iPhone 12, but we would probably see it in the iPhone 13. So right? These could
I
all
would
be.
love it. I would love it because there's some times that I can't use Face ID, right? If I'm masked up, if I'm going out, if it's cold outside, if if I'm wearing sunglasses, sometimes it gives me a hard time and I want to be able to just kind of touch and go. And other times I don't want to touch and go. I want to be able to just swipe and go. And I could do both. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And think about this. Maybe this is something that Apple has fast tracked. Maybe they haven't perfected Touch ID from a button. Maybe it's also coming in iPhone 12 because we are all in a place where we're experiencing difficulties with using Face ID without the face mask because of the face mask situation. Maybe they're thinking ahead of the game. They're thinking people are going to be wearing masks for at least 6 more months. So let's put out a phone that has Touch ID on the side and Face ID on the front. And let's give it to him. Maybe it's not perfect, but at least give him, some. I'm just thinking like that button is so small that it's only going to be able to register such a thin part of your skin.
Yeah.
Whereas, like the button on the home button on an iPhone or an iPad is like, it's circular. It actually fits a lot of your fingerprints. So it's hard for me to imagine that this is going to be a smooth process,
Right.
I feel like it's probably going to be a little bit janky, and Apple doesn't usually do that. But we are also in the midst of a very unusual year, and this might be something that Apple decides they're just going to fast track it, even though it's not necessarily fully baked.
Yeah. Now, if you'll permit me, I have a theory I'd like to indulge with the both of you here.
Yes.
So I was writing a piece today about what we might be expecting from the new iPad, just the flat iPad, the standard 329 entry-level model.
Yes.
And it
the one that
to me,
also might be announced next week. There's also a reason for us to believe that might also be announced next week.
So with Apple making this change for the iPad Air, assuming that is indeed what's happening, the iPad Air runs an A12 processor, has the older chin and forehead design, physical home button with Touch ID, all that stuff. The current or the new iPad is probably also, in my estimation, going to run an A12 because it's been running an A10 for the last 2 years. That's a 4-year-old chip now. So I think, and when they introduced it, it was an almost 2-year-old chip. So I think they might move to a 2-year-old chip again with the A12, keeps those costs down. They're still making the A12 chip. I don't think they're even making the A11 anymore. So that's what I think is going to happen. So we're going to go from a 10.5 inch, the A12 and a 10.5 inch iPad to a 10.2 inch iPad. What I actually think is going to happen. So we'll be able to see maybe next week if I'm right or wrong on this. Apple's just going to stop manufacturing the 10.2 inch iPad and just rename the 10.5 inch iPad that they're currently making to the iPad and sell it for $329. That's what I think the iPad 2020 is going to be.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
This is my theory. They're going to bump that screen size just 1 year later to 10.5, and they're going to leave it at that and make no significant changes to that design at all.
Yeah, to keep the price down.
Yeah.
That's a real thing, and I think the iPad, the standard iPad, there is no loss of quality in a standard iPad. Basically, the iPad is the thing everyone should get, and then the other models are like more advanced for more advanced reasons. The iPad standard is the best iPad for most people. So keeping it at that $329 price point continues to make this a very valuable product for most people. And it's only, people who are like editing software or photography that would need something like an iPad Pro. And the iPad Air is really meant more for people who are kind of on the go all the time and they need like the thin form factor, but they want, the up-to-date processor.
Pro features.
Yeah.
So a crazy thought and not going to happen, but I'll bring it out anyways. Now in this like digital world where pretty much a lot of people are working from home, schooling from home, you need to have something. Could it go even cheaper? Because now people are having to have their, you're on probably a computer, your kids probably need to have a computer. Could they go lower with the price so that right now when people are pressured into buying more devices, it could be even more affordable, or no?
So the current education pricing for the 329 iPad is $299.
Yeah, which
I
is,
wouldn't be
I'll just
surprised.
say, it's really still very expensive for most schools, families. Like there's a reason why they're almost always Chromebooks, like or no name, not no name, but like another type of tablet, because most schools can't afford it. $300 per student, or even if you're doing it for like whatever, 3 classes and you all share, which now you don't want to share, right? Now sharing is a bad thing. You can clean them, but let's just be honest, cleaning your technology does not always end well. Just be careful. And you have to clean it in between each use. So now schools are kind of forced to, children bring my children have to bring their computers to school themselves. So now everyone kind of needs one and they can't afford $300.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah, a lower price point would definitely be absolutely a fabulous idea. But here's what I'm thinking. Is Apple known for dropping the price of current or new models of anything ever?
True. I would be okay if they just dropped the older one they kept one that they had and they dropped it to $199.
Exactly.
Because I would be good with that, because people need it. They need it so badly right now.
And that's actually something that I'm thinking is that no, they wouldn't drop the price of the iPad 2020, but they would potentially, and I think this would be very valuable for them to do, is keep the 2019 iPad and just drop the price of it to, I even think low, like $150. It does the processor, just like Joe said, the processor is 4 years old at this point, so it's not a fancy new product, And I do think that you drop the iPad price down to $150, you're going to see a lot of people that just buy it because it's so inexpensive. And just like the iPhone SE, that there's a lot of people that bought it just because they could now have a second less expensive iPhone laying around the house. So significantly dropping the price of something like that, I think, is like potentially not a bad idea. And Apple has been like putting in the faster processor chips into older devices. Yeah, the SE is a perfect example of that. That it's using the most advanced processor chip for the time. It was using the exact same processor chip you can get in the iPhone 11 and Pro, but it like there's other things in it that made it older, or not older, that made it less expensive. So an iPad 2019, let's call it iPad SE, that has a fast processor for today's technology, but it keeps all of the original hardware. Drop that price down so low that nobody can complain about it, like $150. I mean, $199 would be totally reasonable. $150 would be like, I would go right now and buy it, because like
buy extras.
Yeah, because that's
panels,
so
a wall.
inexpensive.
Yeah, it would be. But yeah, you're right.
So I don't think that Apple's going to do that. I don't think they will, but I think that would be a great idea, especially just like you're saying, Georgia, today, right now, when there are so many people that are working from home, that are schooling from home, that could use a mobile device. And the iPad is great for so many things and for so many reasons. Like significantly dropping the price would be such a great idea. We are almost out of time. We're going over a little bit, but I really want to quickly ask you do you think we're going to see an iPhone 12 at the September 15th event?
No. I think this is Apple Watch, iPad, maybe something to do with services.
Mm-hmm.
This would be the event where I do services stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Which would be the rumored Apple One bundle, which we've been hearing a little bit about. And Georgia, we talked about that before when the rumor first came out about it. So Georgia, do you think there's going to be an iPhone 12 at the September 15th event?
I don't think so either. I think that they're like maybe in October. And like, I think this is going to be like, this is a little event and we're not getting the big flagship product. I'm hoping that if there's an October event or, something, again, just before the holidays, I'm hoping also I get Apple tags. I'm just going to say it. Crossing my fingers. But I think that's when, again, and the iPhone deserves its own event. So both of you are not going to have to probably overwrite too many articles, because you probably will have it spaced out. But that would be my bet, that we're getting those to be happy with it. There'll be enough buzz. People can purchase those. And then right before the holidays, we have guess what we're going to get?
Yeah.
And here's your phone.
Yeah. And your
Apple
Mac.
tags.
And your Apple tags and your AirPods Studio.
I will say one thing. Some people are making kind of a big deal of the fact that the event invite blocks out 2 hours, and that's just a placeholder. That the event might be an hour. It might be 90 minutes. It might be 3 hours. Probably won't be 3 hours, but 2 hours in a calendar invite doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think more or less most of Apple's events of recent years have run within, they've gone way over an hour, like maybe not a full 2 hours, but they've certainly gone over an hour. So it's unusual that they put an end time at all, though. You have to admit that. That's not normal. They don't usually put an end time.
I don't have to admit anything at all.
Yeah.
But they know, because this is it's not going to be a live kind of everyone their event. They actually know about how long this is going to run. Whereas in comparison, they don't know usually how long it's going to run. And so they're like, just block out this time.
They don't know what's going to fail.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Or, someone's
clapping,
late,
late. Yeah.
They have to kind of push and pull depending upon that. But now they kind of already know. It's already probably all done, and they're just, getting everything ready.
I wouldn't be surprised if they've done their WWDC style filming for everything they're going to announce this fall, but they're going to break it up into episodes.
Yeah.
So Tuesday is episode 1, the Apple Watch Menace, and then we've got Attack of the iPhone, and then Revenge of the Mac.
I love this. I love that. Oh man, those are perfect titles. You need to tweet that out, Joe. That's pretty clever.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are at the end of our hour, and there's still so many fun things to talk about. But again, I do think, just like the two of you are saying, we're not going to see those things this upcoming next Tuesday, but we will talk about it all the following Friday when we find out for sure what Apple is announcing. Thank you to everybody who joined us. We had a pretty decent crowd this time, so thanks for everyone that joined us live. That was really great. I wanted to point out we had a new person, a new name that I hadn't seen before, Dalva from Brazil. So thank you for joining in the conversation. It's nice to have you participating. I love to see new names, so that was really great. And thank you to everybody who listens, who don't get involved in the chat live, but who listen live. If you want to do that, we normally do this every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Sometimes we're a little late, but for the most part, you're always going to get us around that time. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that like button. We are. I don't. Let me make sure that I know my. What our channel is. Let's see if it'll pop up. I think I'm going to mess something up right now. We are at, nope, I don't know what our channel is. It's the iMore Show. So apologies to that. So iMore Show on YouTube, you can subscribe to us and then get notifications when we go live. And that's good enough, hopefully. And if you don't have the opportunity to listen live every Friday with us, you can also watch us on YouTube at any time, or you can subscribe to us on iTunes, of course. This is actually the reason we do this show, is for the audio on iTunes. We just like to do it live because we like to look at each other face to face. So it's really fun. So thank you to everybody who also just listens to us on your favorite podcast catcher. And thank you, of course, to Jim Messendorf for everything that he does for us. He edits us. He makes us sound good. He throws in all the funny bazings and blangs that you probably hear that we don't hear. No,
I didn't even know that.
He doesn't, but if he starts doing it, Jim, if you start doing that, I'm going to be so happy. If you just throw in some boing, 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 boings, because that would be so funny. All right. And this has been another episode of the iMore Show. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great week and get excited because the next time we talk, we will know what kind of products Apple's going to be coming out with. Thanks a lot, everybody. Goodbye.